Hello and welcome everybody to CSO at reInvent Week in Review, show number 2. So for those of you who've joined us in the past, you know what this is all about. For those of you that haven't, we are here to help the AWS community get their heads around, discover, digest, discuss all of the key announcements, the best sessions, all of the good stuff that's come out of AWS reInvent over the last week. We're also going to be looking at the infrastructure keynote, which happened as well. So before I go over to the pundits, a few things that I need to mention. So in addition to being here live with us on a Friday afternoon, the key thing that you must do, if you haven't done already, is join our Slack group. There's a lot of conversation, a lot of chat going on in there from our pundits, but also amongst the community. And most importantly, it's where you'll get to hear first about the pundit picks that are happening most days. Our sponsors. So all of this is only possible as a result of our fabulous sponsors that support us in putting this on. So I'm going to list them now. So we've got Inner Wisdom, we have Infinity Works, we have Do It International, we've got Stack Rocks, and we've got Steamhouse. We've had sessions, chats with in the past, over the previous weeks. We've had Inner Wisdom, Do It International, and Stack Rocks. And today I'm going to have a chat with Adrian Hesketh from Infinity Works. And then I will probably also give a bit of a pitch for Steamhouse, which is the consultancy that I am with. We're going to go over now to meet our pundits. Can you hear me? Hello, everybody.
Hello.
That was like, I thought, uh-oh, sound has dropped. They can see my mouth moving, but there's not. Right, that music as well, I think it always makes me smile, but it does throw me off slightly. I'm going to ask, there's a smaller number of us today, so I'm going to ask you each to just go round and introduce yourselves, and then we can get into a chat about what's happened at reInvent this week. I'm going to go first of all to you, Matt.
Hey everyone, I'm Matt from Bridge Crew. I'm a developer advocate at Bridge Crew and kind of here talking all things security with a slightly geeky personal interest in edge and containers and kind of low power compute.
Cool, great stuff. Jason, please.
Oh yeah, Jason Gregson, Senior Cloud Architect at Do It. And yeah, really interested in sort of that core infrastructure side and those elements of reInvent and AWS.
Excellent, thank you. Phil?
I'm Phil Bassett, Head of Solution Engineering at Inner Wisdom, and I'm also one of the AWS APN ambassadors.
Super, thank you. Adrian?
So hi, I'm from Infinity Works, and what I'm really interested in is developer tooling and productivity and anything you can do around that. So things like serverless, databases, anything that makes my life easier, basically.
Perfect, sounds good. And Georgia, please.
Hiya, I'm Georgia from Infinity Works. I'm an engineering consultant, and I'm here as a pundit in all manner of senses, I suppose, just to explore everything, learn some new stuff. This is my first reInvent, so yeah, just seeing what's out there.
Perfect. Yes, your first reInvent and a bit of a different kind of reInvent. And that's what I wanted to start off on today, to just sort of see how people are finding it. It's a very different format. Obviously, we can't physically be there in Las Vegas. What's the biggest difference? Well, you can't comment on that, Georgia, but the biggest difference, but how are you finding it in general? What are your reflections so far?
I'm drinking a lot less. If that that would be a first thing.
You're doing what a lot less?
Drinking a lot less.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Yep, very true.
At reInvent, there's always a vendor's free drinks to sort of enjoy, right? There's always a party somewhere where you can get a free drink, and you know you've not got anything else to do, right? There's no you don't have to do the dishes. You don't have to.
You don't have to put the
do
kids to
anything
bed.
else.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's a sort of weird week where you kind of put everything to one side. You're in a different time zone, usually. So, you can't really be bothered by people at work and all that kind of stuff. So it's very much like a real week of focus, and you really plan everything out, and you really try and, well, I certainly try and maximize the day, right? I guess the other thing is the real reInvent, hardly watch any talks, mostly hands-on sessions is what I'm really interested in, where you get to try something out, and those kind of things. Whereas this year has been just kind of catching the talks.
Yeah. Okay. Anyone else? Any thoughts? Similar things? How are you managing to? Because you haven't got that separation from work.
I think that's the biggest thing. Yeah, that's certainly the thing I noticed the most is being able to just disconnect from work and the usual trials and tribulations. Nothing major, but it's really difficult to focus on any sort of single track when you've got Chime and Slack and everything else pinging off in the background going, could you just? And it's like, well, I'm watching this, but hang on, there's a customer issue, so I really should go to that. But when you're at reInvent, you can just focus on the thing that you want to do, go do it. And then I think the other side of it is the physical side of it is that I don't know how I do this. I pour through the agenda and go, oh yeah, definitely. Then you speak to a few mates and you go, well, have you seen this thing on the thing and the thing? And you go, that's excellent. I must go to that. So you scrap half your plans and you go to those instead. So you sort of miss all of that side of it as well. Stuff that you wouldn't, certainly from the title, you can't recognize what it is. But when
physically being in one particular hotel where something's on as well, you perhaps think, I can't be bothered traveling down.
Oh, absolutely.
What's on in this room next?
Yeah, so I've done 9 miles today, so I'm not going to walk anymore. I'm just going to stay in a plateau. Done.
On the scrapping things as well, I think, it ties back to what everyone's saying, the kind of, you're not detached from your day job. There would be a morning session where something new was introduced and it would kind of be related to what your customers care about or the project you're currently working on. And you would scrap off the afternoon, you would go and sit in a bar, maybe with a colleague, you would get your laptops out and you would have the time disconnected from work to actually just go and hack on that new service or go and play with it or go and really understand it. I find myself kind of, watching a session here, carrying on with my day job, and then still catching up on someone else's like write up an opinion rather than kind of getting that immediate hands-on for myself, which is definitely different to when you're kind of, physically locked in Vegas for a week.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is if they moved it from somewhere like somewhere else, it has to have that feel of being trapped, like you get in Vegas.
in a bubble. Maybe trapped.
I will say my drinking hasn't actually stopped though compared to Vegas, because someone bought me one of those Brewdog advent calendars where you get a different beer a day. So that's actually tied in quite nicely with reInvent.
Excellent. Yeah, good.
I'm missing getting more socks. I've run out. I need more socks. Somebody send me some socks.
The internet is listening. You're going to get. Just check Facebook. There'll be adverts.
I missed the swag so much. I took part in the Cable Detective game the other day, so at least I got a hoodie on the way. Apparently.
Yes, I'm glad you mentioned that. Actually, that was something that I only sort of saw by chance the other day. And so I think we need to put the link for that. Just explain what that is, Phil.
Yeah, so there's they're doing play normally at reInvent. There's loads of other different sessions. The ultimate play is the big party at the end called Replay. And they're trying to bring a bit of that play into the normal reInvent. So they create a bunch of games. Now, when you normally go to reInvent also, the day one, you get something like this. This is last year's hoodie, a nice blue comfy number. And you get given that when you sign up and register. Well, you registered before, but you have to go to the desk to sign in and get your pass to the whole thing. So you're given your hoodie. So this year, what they do is, because that's not happening, they combine the two, and they made this game called Cable Detective, where you have to go through 4 different parts of the world and complete 1 or 2 very simple AWS questions. If anybody gets stuck on those questions, slack us. I know the answers because I got them right. And the other guys will know the answers. They are pretty simple. And then at the end of that, it says in 70 hours, you'll get an email. And then after those 70 hours pass, you get an email saying, here's your unique code. You enter that in. It says, congratulations, you've won a hoodie. And then AWS will send that to you some point in the near future at their cost. So grab your hoodie.
Perfect. Absolutely. I think we should, if Joe hasn't already put that into Twitch and into the Slack channel, he will be putting the link for that game in at some point. So there are some benefits as well. You know, the access. We've not all had to travel and spend vast amounts of money to get there, etc. And we can all sleep in our own beds, etc.
Oh, yeah.
So let's move on to what have we seen this week. We'll come back to some more in-depth conversations later on, and obviously, Phil. We've got your videos that you have done with the other ML pundits, Gillian and Mike, but you have our kind of headline slot for today, which was your chat with Julian Simon. I'm anglicising his name horribly there, aren't I? Julian Simon, probably.
He's French, so you're doing nothing to Brexit right now.
No. I don't think I can add any damage to that.
Boris has done a pretty good job himself, hasn't he?
Yeah. So, global evangelist at AWS for machine learning. So we've got not the full interviews to play today, but they are both on YouTube now. And so we're going to play 15 minutes of each of those, and then people can go and watch the rest of them at their leisure. This is what we're doing, you see. We're able to sort of put our content out for people to access anytime. So you've been doing that. Georgia, we've not heard from you yet. Do you have, what have you been able to catch this week?
Not a whole lot, to be honest. Too much work going on, as we were saying. I've been trying to watch it every possible moment. I even watched some whilst on my stationary bike training. It was fun, actually. What have I seen? Well, I enjoyed the machine learning keynote. That was good. Learning about AWS Clarify, which is pretty interesting. I've been reading a bit about that. I also watched...
What is it? I didn't catch the machine learning.
It's really cool.
It's a bias...
Georgia can go on about it, but we do go into quite some later.
Yeah. I'm sure you're going to go into it later. But yeah, it's bias detection, machine learning, pre and post production models. Yes, but I'm sure you'll go into that later. I watched that, and I watched a bit about snow cone, which is pretty cool. My favorite bit was learning how rugged it really is. It can survive humid, dusty desert.
Well, I'll do what Adrian did there. Tell us what snow cone is then.
Oh God, Adrian, tell us what snow cone is then.
Okay, it's an edge computing device, isn't it? It's the smallest member of the snow family, right? So you've got the big truck. What's that called? The snowmobile,
My
which
favorite
is
thing ever.
petabyte scale data. You've got the snowball, which is, I can't remember how many terabytes that can store, but a kind of big chunky old school PC size of thing. But
I think the snow cone's like 80 terabytes, or maybe that's
that's right. But they can be quite expensive to order and send back and forth. So I have a friend who works in sort of video production, and he was interested in moving some of his stuff to the cloud. He was like, "Oh, it's a bit pricey." But I think the snow cone is even cheaper. Well, it's $60, I think, for a job on snow cone. And then, but then the thing is, you can keep it for a long time and pay $6 a day. So I think I worked it out at sort of $3,000 a year for this thing, which is kind of makes it a little bit expensive. But it's 2 vCPUs, and it's got I think it's got 4 gigabytes of RAM available to compute. So you can run your own compute on it, but you can also use it as a sort of storage caddy to send backwards and forwards to AWS. I thought I might get one and have a play with it, see what happens
definitely.
with it. Maybe see how rugged it really is.
That's what I was thinking. So have they tested this?
Make sure you film that.
I have used one of the normal snow, the normal devices, the mid devices before. They are pretty well built.
I think
Snowball.
Yeah, the snowball.
You do have to pay quite a hefty fee if it somehow gets damaged. So we might need to crowdfund the destruction.
Is this right? So
next week is broke a snowball.
We've got 2 appeals going on now: the Phil Badford stock appeal, the Adrian Hesketh snow cone. Is it that you're after?
Destroying snow cone.
Right.
Yeah, we can. Hello, Jan. By the way, thanks for joining us. We're just
hey guys,
going around and just talking about the things that we've watched today, this week, and so I'll come to you in a bit, Jan, if that's all right, and just hear what you've managed to catch. Who else wants to? Jason, what have you been able to see?
The AIML, that was good. Mostly keynotes. Haven't done really a lot else. Picked a few bits and pieces out, watching blogs, that sort of thing. Overall very good. disappointed by the infrastructure keynote, but we'll get back onto that one. But yeah, so really just picking up bits and pieces. Work keeps getting in the way, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think, Jan, actually, just to bring you up to speed, the kind of key thing that we've talked about so far is that this week's been a hard week to actually catch a lot of stuff. You know, not being in the bubble of Vegas means that real life is there kind of distracting us from being able to watch sessions. What's your thoughts on that? Similar experience, or have you been glued to it? That's a question for you, Jan. Sorry, just in case that wasn't clear.
Yeah, same here. Last week I was able to catch a lot more sessions than I was able to do this week. Obviously, you know, with work and meetings, and it's kind of hard to, you know, take yourself out for 3 weeks and not get anything else done. So I managed to watch the infrastructure keynote, which again, like Jason said, there's not much happened there. There's just a lot of graviton, even though it was quite funny. They showed the sponsor message from Intel, and then, hey, here's our own chip.
Yeah, that advert at the beginning was very odd. Yeah, we build things together. Here's graviton.
I remember going to an AWS partner event, and Intel had a stand there, and they were sort of giving away merch and stuff, and I was like, why are you here? I asked the guy, I was like, you know, are you selling Intel to us? Surely you're selling it to AWS. Like, you know, I don't really care where my code runs unless, you know, there's a specific reason.
Yeah, I went up to that stand as well, asking a few questions, and they couldn't even answer them. They were technical processor-based questions, but they didn't even know what the answers were. It's like, okay, moving swiftly on. I have no idea why you're here. And I thought, oh, I may as well use the opportunity to dive into some obscure parts of the processor. And they're like, nah, we don't know that stuff. Like, bye, join the swag. No.
And Corey Quinn said that apparently that's a lot for the keynote. It was like $175,000 or something like that to have that sponsorship slot in the infrastructure keynote. But
was money well spent then.
They did put the drones up last year, didn't they? Did you all see that last year? The drones in the sky at replay?
No.
That was awesome. That was Intel.
Okay.
No.
Other than that, I watched a couple of sessions. I think there was one I saw with I forgot the speaker's name, but it was on Aurora Serverless 2. So when that went into quite a good deep dive on some of the things that is gonna do with Aurora Serverless 2. And then there was a session I watched yesterday on the new admin UI for Amplify, which does look quite interesting, especially the thing that you can do in terms of not just allow you to manage your, I guess, front end and back end, but also it comes with a built-in CMS, so that if you're building a new app and you want to have some kind of a portal for non-technical people to jump in and just editing data and things like that, so that some of that gets built for you out of the box. So I thought that was quite interesting. I still have some reservations about Amplify, just in terms of the limitations you're going to run into, because it's still running on CloudFormation, and some of the code gen stuff I've seen in the past is not optimal. Uses a lot of data DB scans, which is fine because it's going to work, but it's not going to scale well once you've got enough data in your database. And also there's a lot of problems with when you need to change things, need to add when the model you're creating in the I guess the drag and drop thing, which looks really impressive, but you can really easily create changes that CloudFormation is not going to be able to roll out. Things like, oh no, now we need to add the 2 global second index. CloudFormation can only do 1 at a time. So things like that, which I think they're still working on to make it better. So that you can provide that convenience without losing the ability to update your stack at some point in the future. There was another session which I thought was quite good. It was the running ultra high throughput ad tech workloads on the Aerospike, which I thought was quite interesting as well. Ad tech is one of those spaces that's got some really interesting stuff they're doing because of how much throughput that they got to deal with and the ultra low latency things that they're doing there as well. But yeah, this week hasn't been quite as reInvent focused for me as last week.
Yeah, yeah. There's a serverless leadership session coming up next week, isn't there? Which I think is obviously in your area of interest.
Yeah, when is that?
Oh gosh, now you're asking
Wasn't
me.
that AJ Nair on this Wednesday where he was sort of talking about the building revolutionary serverless apps? So I think there is another one as well. I think it's on
so.
Thursday.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I saw that I saw AJ's one, but I didn't. There's some problem with the streaming, and it wasn't just me. I saw Jeremy Daly and a few other people complain as well that the stream just keeps cutting out. So I try to watch it, but I missed a lot of it.
Yeah, yeah. And Zamira has joined us as well. Hello, Zamira.
Hello guys. Sorry, I was in the meeting with customers, so I couldn't join early.
No problem at all. You're just in time for me to say, what have you enjoyed and watched this week? What have you had a chance to catch?
Well, this week was pretty silent for me. I didn't watch a lot of session. However, I watched infrastructure keynote and also machine learning keynote was this week.
Yep.
Oh,
that's
yes.
Right. Yeah.
Yes, I have a lot of news then. I'm a bit confused was this week or last week, but definitely machine learning keynote was really, really interesting. A lot of new features, a lot of services was launched. And especially, I was very curious about all of these services that was about industrial manufacturing that are completely new, I think, in AWS.
They were cool. Do you mean like the little sensors, the environment sensors?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So there were so many. It was AWS Monitron that basically monitor end-to-end this kind of manufacturing and monitor if the quality is good and all of this stuff. And also was AWS look out for vision, look out for equipment, all of these related to the industrial things. I don't know if you watched already these sessions.
Yeah, so we've got Phil Basford has got a couple of we've got a couple of features, a couple of videos that we're going to play very shortly with Phil's analysis of all of that went on in the ML keynote. So great that you've watched the infrastructure keynote as well. Looks like we've got a few of you that we're going to be able to come back to in a bit to really get into that. Jason's grinning broadly there. He's got some opinions. So we are now, I'm going to move back to the other camera and introduce some of the pundit picks. Actually, before I do that, Zamira, thank you. You have been particularly productive on the pundit picks this week. I think we've had 3 from you. So very much appreciate that.
Yeah, I really enjoy this part.
Excellent. So, as mentioned, lots of pundit picks coming out. I've mentioned already that they are put into the Slack channel and go onto YouTube. They are kind of time specific. So it's best to make sure that you're checking out the Slack channel. And as the pundit picks come in, they are going to be saying the things that you should be watching over that next 24-hour period. So, however, to give you a feel for what we've got, we're going to play 3 of those pundit picks now. So the first one we're going to go to is Phil Basford talking about some new Redshift features.
Hi everybody, really quick pundit pick for me. Redshift have just dropped a whole load of new features from multi-AZ, everything, new instance type, everything's just landed. To get the inside track on that, go to the data analytics keynote called Harnessing the Power of Analytics. It's happening right now and it will be another 2 sessions, one overnight and one tomorrow morning. So grab it while you can. Bye for now.
Great one, that, Phil. Christmas tree in the background, clearly the family around, but you know, you took the time out to share that with us, so much appreciated. The next one we're going to go to is, so Mike Fowler has also done a couple of pundit picks for us this week. This one is one that he's done on certification.
Hi, I'm Mike Fowler, Principal Data Engineer at Clarinet. I've been having a look at the reInvent session catalog, and I've discovered that there's a whole area dedicated to AWS certification. Now, whether you're thinking about getting a certification or you're looking to recertify, there's quite a lot of stuff that's useful in there, including a review of how they prepare their exam guides and how they mark the exams as well. Perhaps the most useful thing is the exam readiness webinars. These are about 3 hours long, and they cover all the topics that you'll find on the exam. If it's the first time you're sitting the exam, it's useful to go through so that you make sure that you're preparing the right material. It won't be enough for you to pass the exam, but it'll certainly help you focus your revision. And if you're going through recertification, it's extremely valuable because it will cover areas that perhaps weren't on the exam when you last took the exam. So if you are looking to recertify or to certify, best of luck.
Okay, super. That's one of two that Mike Fowler has done for us this week. And another one we're going to play is from Liz Rice. Now, this one is actually Liz doing some shameless self-promotion for, she said this herself. So for her talk, which is actually, and this is the other bit of news that's happened, is that the reInvent sessions are going to carry on through into January as well. And this is Liz teeing up her talk, which is going to appear in January.
Hi, I'm Liz Rice from Aqua Security and AWS Container Hero. Now, if you've been paying very close attention to the reInvent homepage, you'll have seen that the dates have changed. It's no longer just 3 weeks in December. If you thought 3 weeks was long, well, now there's going to be more days of reInvent talks in January 2021. Now, I need to look out for this because I've been recording a talk myself that's going out in January, and I'm very happy to say that it is now listed in the session catalogue. So if you go to the session catalogue and search for scanning, you'll find my talk, Vulnerability Scanning for Kubernetes Applications. It's first going out on January the 13th, but why not add it to your calendar now?
And so I'm sure we're all putting that into our calendars to go. And Liz Rice is a brilliant presenter, very interesting, really knows her stuff. So I am sure that's going to be a highlight for us all in January when she's doing that talk. I know a couple of our other pundits also have talks that are scheduled for that January period. I thought that we had one of Zamira's queued up to play, but I've just been told that actually that's not in the queue. We're going to try and get that sorted out. Joe and Dave will work in the background now. We very much hope to bring you one of Zamira's pundit picks from earlier this week. Right, now, as we've all heard, the highlight really of this week has been the machine learning keynote. And Phil Basford has been particularly busy and productive in terms of his coverage of that for us this week. I'm only now going to introduce the next piece that we have, which is Phil Basford doing a fireside chat with Julian Simon, who is the global evangelist at AWS for machine learning. Dave, roll that VT, please.
Hi everybody, welcome back to the Consum coverage of reInvent. Today we're very excited. We have the ultimate ML pundit to joining us today. We have Julian Simmons from AWS, who's the global evangelist for machine learning. So welcome, Julian. And how are you?
Well, I'm good. I'm still standing. It's well, reInvent is almost over. So a few more days to go, and yeah, then I can take a break. But so far, so good.
Excellent. How did you find the keynote? And what's your perception of why ML has grown to such a significant that it deserves such a big billing?
Well, you're right. It's the first year we have a proper machine learning keynote, and I don't know if you caught that, but I think Swami at the end said, well, there's even more stuff that we didn't talk about. and yes, in fact, there are a few more things that have been released that were not even mentioned. So the reason why we have so many launches is not just because we think it's cool to build ML technology. It's because our customers are asking us to build that. And I think the tenets that Swami covered are a really interesting way of seeing how customers use ML and what's important to them. And one size does not fit all. So if you're an expert, if you've been doing machine learning and deep learning for years, okay, well, you want the highest performance tools and the easiest tools to scale large training jobs. And there were a lot of announcements on Amazon SageMaker around performance and developer productivity, in the widest sense of the word, profiling, automation, etc. Then again, if you're new to machine learning, if your problem is really, hey, I work in this industry segment, and I know I have data, but I don't have maybe the expertise or the resources to build models, myself. And then, can I use high-level AI services that get the job done? And I think that, that long section in the keynote covering look out for equipment, look out for manufacturing, etc. I think this is exactly that. This is really, AWS customers in the industrial and manufacturing sector coming to us saying, okay, help us solve business problems that we face every day using machine learning, but make it simple, make it easy. We don't want to write TensorFlow code, which is a fun thing to do, but for a lot of customers, this is not an exciting prospect. They don't care for that. They want to go from problem to solution, and these higher level services help them do that. So I'm very, very happy to see that we're trying to help customers across the spectrum, the expert ones and the ones that don't even want to be experts. So this is pretty cool, I think.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty exciting around Lookout, etc., because that's like you focus on people that doesn't even have data. These big industry machines that are probably people invested over a few years, many hundreds of thousands of dollars, etc. And they're not edge devices, they're not ML enabled or anything. They do the thing they were meant to do, and
exactly,
things like
and they're not going to change. They are what they are. They, like you said, they're going to stay in the factory or in the warehouse for years. And so ML needs to go to them, and we need to build services that can just bolt on those equipment, pieces of equipment, and just solve the problem. And Amazon Monitron is a good example of that. Put the sensors on the machine, and then that's it. So you don't need to, you can set it up in a day, right, or in hours.
Absolutely. And also there's also a lot of focus around bias in the keynote the other day, and the launch of Clarify and in that area. For that's really interesting. You guys are also open source bits of it, I understand, from what I've seen over the last few days. Can you give us a bit more insight into that?
Sure. So the SageMaker Clarify is our best attempt at helping customers on two big problems. And the first one is bias, and the second one is model explainability. And these are different problems. They are kind of related, but okay, there are still different things. So bias is has been increasingly called out as a problem in AI and machine learning, and I think it needs to be taken seriously. I mean, who here wants to train biased models, unfair models, discriminating models? No one. Okay, no one in their right mind wants to do that. So the question is, well, this is the data that I have. Okay, this is the data that I've collected over the years. It is what it is. And again, no one consciously tries to collect biased data, but the way it's collected, the way it's sampled, processed, etc., could introduce bias. And in large data sets, it is very hard to figure out. So Clarify makes it quite easy, I think, to say, okay, here's my data. These are the sensitive features that I'm interested in. And often these are, demographics, maybe, age range and gender and, where you live and, maybe your salary. I mean, that kind of information. And you want to make sure that your data set is a fair representation of the real world, right? So do you have enough data so that the algo can understand, the subtleties and the statistical patterns that are in there in a fair way, okay? And of course, so you can do that on the data set itself, and then you can do it on the model itself, right? Which lets you see if, maybe the algo that you're using is increasing bias or decreasing bias in a certain way. So one thing I want to make clear is, Clarify will tell you that, for example, let's take a simple example. Let's say you have a credit, credit decision model for a bank, and you want to see if age is a factor, right? So you would say, okay, let's compare the group of customers that are below 45 and the customers who are above 45. Okay. And well, I'm not a credit expert, I'm not a banker, but it seems to me if you have the same risk profile, exactly the same risk profile, it shouldn't matter if you're 25 or 55, right? Or maybe I'm wrong about this, but let's say this is my assumption. I don't want age to be a factor. So I could run this analysis on the data set and see if, all things being equal, people under 45 have the same chance of getting their credit approved that people above 45, right? And then I could do the same on the model and see, okay, is my algo introducing bias or reducing bias, etc. Now, Clarify will pinpoint those metrics and say, well, yeah, there is a difference, right? With respect to this attribute and this threshold, there is a difference. So then it's up to you to say, is this a legitimate difference or not? Because it's a very complicated discussion, because people say, oh, it's biased, it's bad. Well, I don't know, it's maybe there's a good business reason that the outcome is less favorable for a certain group of people versus another one, right? And this is when explainability is important, because explainability will tell you which features have the strongest positive or negative contribution to the outcome. Okay, so if you see that a certain feature has a very strong impact, you could say, well, does that make sense, right? If you see age is actually a very strong contributor to the outcome, you could say, well, wait a minute, it's maybe credit duration is important, credit amount is important, salary range is important, pragmatic data points telling you, yes, you're going to pay your credit back or not. Is age important, or is your location, your zip code important? You could think about it, right? You would have to think about it. So that's what Clarify does. It's going to point you at potential differences in potential different outcomes for groups of people that you define, or group of data instances that you define. It doesn't have to be people. And then you go and figure it out. Okay. You go and figure out, is this justified or not? Okay, and so you can see the metrics, and you can see which features are important in the explainability part, and then you can look at this and say, well, is this model doing the right thing? Yes or no? From a business perspective, from a legal perspective, I mean, GDPR, for example, is mandating that you explain your predictions and your algos. And from even an ethical perspective, is it doing the right thing, right? If I have the same risk credit profile as you, but I live in another part of the country, and my credit gets declined and yours gets approved, why is that? Well, Mr. Banker, explain it to me, right? And they need to explain it to me, and they need to explain it to the regulator. So Clarify is a really, really important service. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. I suppose an example we had in the UK over the summer was the prediction of, they used an algorithm to predict the grades for GCSE and A-level results in secondary schools, and it was historically biased towards private schools over public schools. So it's that kind of thing. That
and hiring, hiring, education, healthcare, banking, financial services, all those areas are our daily lives, right? So we need to make sure those models do the right thing, because otherwise you could be impacting the lives of a lot of people negatively without even knowing it and without even wanting to do it. No one is evil and trying to build evil models. It's not like that. It's just that those things are complex. Data is complex. And you need to make sure this model is doing the right thing. And Clarify is going to help you do that.
Excellent. I want to go back on another subject you touched on, was distributed training, etc. There's a lot around that. I have the book here, the Bible that you wrote. It's really good, folks. I recommend anybody to read it. There is a bit about distributed training, and it's a really good section. When I read it, I did take away from, you have to know the levers to pull. You have to be a bit skillful, and you do have to, it's a bit of gut feel, I think, as well. And I suppose that's where some of the announcements over the last few days come into play.
Well, you could call it experience, or you could call it dark magic, probably a bit of both, and luck. I think is the third ingredient, especially for deep learning. So you make a really good point. So distributed training is, the idea is pretty simple, right? It's divide and conquer. There's too much data for a single instance to deal with. We split it out. We send different bits to different instances. They work on that bit, and then we add up all those results, and voila. So that's the intuition. Now the problem is that as you keep scaling your jobs, as you keep adding instances and GPUs, etc., the amount of chatter, of network communication that takes place between instances and even between GPUs just increases, right, a lot, and that becomes a bottleneck. So what we introduced just a few days ago is a new distributed algo. So it's called SageMaker Data Parallelism, SDP. And the really new thing here is that we still do the same. We still, break the data in chunks and send them to different instances and different GPUs. But there is no central place that needs to collect results and aggregate them. Okay, so there is no parameter server, and the GPUs themselves don't even talk to one another. Instead, they talk to the instance CPUs, right? So the instance that are in the training cluster, we use the CPU to train the model. We use the GPU to train the model, and we use the CPU to receive the parameter updates, aggregate them, and distribute them back. So that frees GPUs from having to communicate and talk to one another. They can just talk to the instance CPU, which is easier and faster. And so, and of course, the second benefit is you don't need to have dedicated parameter servers. You don't need to have extra infrastructure just to run the training job. You don't need to penalize one of the nodes saying, hey, on top of training, you're also going to be the parameter server that receives everything. So it's a fully distributed algo. And I mean, you saw the benchmarks that Swami shared. They were pretty good. Benchmarks are benchmarks, but it's still a very significant speed up. So that's data parallelism. That's I would say the improvement on existing distributed technique like parameter servers or Horovod, etc., which were already available. And there's an even weirder problem, which is, what if my model is so large that it won't fit in GPU memory? Okay, and it's hard to believe that this is possible, because the latest GPUs, the GPUs that we have in the P4 family have 40 gigs of memory. So how could a model not fit in 40 gigs? Well, it's the model and the training data. Okay, so think about super large computer vision models that work with 3D images or 3D videos. Well, the samples themselves are huge, high resolution 3D images. This is huge, right? And the models are big. Think about natural language processing, all those really crazy models like BERT and T5 and all those behemoths. There's no other word for it. They're completely crazy and super efficient. Well, it's a problem. So again, we divide and conquer, but this time we split the model itself. Okay, so think of a deep learning network as it's pancakes, right? Or waffles, or it's a stack of.
Okay, and so sorry to cut Julian off in his prime there. The idea of, so what we wanted to do was show you some of that interview. The link to that full talk is now in the Twitch channel. And so, if you've enjoyed what you've heard from Julian and Phil there so far, do go and check out that link later. Don't leave the show now. Thank you to Julian for giving up the time to do that, by the way. I believe he's extremely busy at the moment of that week of the ML keynote. So much appreciated, and great work, Phil. Thank you for getting that lined up with him. We're going to go straight over now into another VT, again, looking at the machine learning keynote. We have three of our pundits. They introduced themselves at the start of this talk, so I won't do that again. Dave, roll this VT, please.
Good morning, everybody. This is some dedicated session to machine learning following yesterday's ML keynote with Swami. And today we're joined by some of the greatest minds in machine learning. So let's pass it over to Mike. Mike, you're joining us again today. Mike, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, yeah. So I'm a principal data engineer at Clarinet, where I help our customers make better use of their data in the cloud. Largely focused on moving data around to get it into a position where you can start doing your machine learning. I hold 10 AWS certifications, including the machine learning specialty. And at the beginning of next year, I'll be CTO at a SaaS company where I'll be doing a lot more machine learning, in particular with graph databases.
Thank you, Mike. Let's go to Gillian next. Gillian.
Hi, I'm Gillian McCann, and I'm the CTO of WorkRate Software, which is a SaaS serverless product that runs in AWS, and we focus on the intelligent employee workplace, trying to bring some of those ML capabilities into the daily products that employees use during their day. So I am an ML hero with AWS, and I've spoken at multiple reInvents. And the area that I really like to focus on is, I call them like conversational AI, is making sense of data and being able to converse with computers.
And I'm Phil Bassett. I'm Head of Solution Engineering at InnoWisdom. We're one of the premier consultancy partners for AWS in the UK, and we're an ML specialist. And I'm also AWS APN ambassador, focusing on machine learning and ML ops. Great. Okay, so yesterday was the first keynote. It'd be good to get our views on how that went. It featured Swami, somebody you know well, Gillian.
Yes, I spoke with Swami last year at reInvent when we did the launch of Kendra. And I thought it was great to see an ML specific keynote, and it just shows the range of new services and capabilities that have been delivered. When we compare this year to last year, I mean, it was just so much. And the fact that it needed its dedicated session, I thought was great. And I think it does show, you know, ML is everywhere, and AWS are really trying to enable like developers and engineers, you know, to be able to take advantage of that.
Cool. And Mike, what did you how did you think it went?
Yeah, I think it went well. As Gillian said, there's just so much that was released yesterday. It's kind of overwhelming. But I think that making it available for all, that's the big thing. I think compared to the other clouds, AWS has done so much to make machine learning accessible to any developer. You don't need to be a specialist to you know, get started. Yeah, sure, if you want to do the most powerful advanced stuff, it helps to know. But you can still get going with all kinds of services right off the bat.
Excellent. I suppose one thing I liked was the particular focus around how ML can be brought into places that don't necessarily actually have data. That was interesting use with Monotron and Panorama, etc. A lot is made of the latent value in data that you have, and that's obviously your rich source of machine learning data. But a lot of companies, especially industrial companies, etc., don't have those data sets. So it's interesting how AWS have put a lot more focus about how to enable ML for those types of customers. So that was quite important. For the format as well, it had a good balance of announcements versus case studies and user stories, and particularly like the NFL one. Every time I go to reInvent, I always end up watching a couple of NFL games half drunk in a bar. I always trying to work out what was actually going on. So it's good to see some of the stuff they're doing behind that, because it can be a bit brutal. So the stuff on collision and concussion was quite interesting, I thought. What was our standout announcements?
For me, I think it wasn't just one, it was like the range of features added to SageMaker. Again, it's all about enabling developers, like the jumps. So, I mean, I could list them, but it was just the first sort of section was all these features were added to the SageMaker Studio, you know, the jump start, you know, the pre-trained models. So, I mean, last night, that was the first thing that I launched when I seen this was SageMaker Studio, and I was trying out the jump start, you know, the one-click deploy of models, the pipelines, ML ops, and like simplifying that and showing, you know, engineers, you know, end to end how you could deliver this. And I think it's just it's bringing the gap, or shortening the gap, closing the gap, as you say, closing the gap between, you know, standard engineering and data science. And I come from you know, like a cloud architecture, serverless engineering background, and then I have, you know, morphed and learned about ML and NLP and through AWS, and I just see like this convergence now of, you know, standard engineering techniques, and the ML pipeline looked really good, and then behind the scenes, you know, it's creating the code pipeline, code deploy. You can see the models and all the stuff the artifacts being created in SageMaker. So it was even just a great way to learn, you know, how you might do that, even if you don't use that tool itself. And then just the data wrangler, the processing of data. So to my mind, it was that big chunk of new features that I can see, even just from learning and exploring, you know, more about how models work, and to clarify as well. So yeah, I thought that was really powerful. And again, the key message to my mind is, you know, engineers will learn and need to learn more about ML, and these are great tools for you know, the engineering community.
Absolutely, I can completely agree on the whole pipeline bit. Actually, to build out a full kind of ML pipeline on AWS, it involves quite detailed skills in quite a few areas of DevOps, engineering, architecture, and then just the ML and the data science side of it. So that's kind of a really interesting development. Mike, I suppose you'd love some of the fact that they've dropped ML into every single data product they have yesterday.
Pretty much, yeah. And then particularly Neptune ML, the one that has really caught my eye, knowing that where I'm going next, we've got a graph database already, and we're trying to do machine learning. So it's just, let's load it into Neptune and see what we can do. But from working with customers over the last few years, just having the ability to do that right from the database, so like Redshift ML there as well, saves you moving all the data around. You can just start experimenting right away. The pipelines piece, though, that's biggie. It was on my wish list in our pre-event show. Something like a managed Kubeflow offering. Well, okay, this isn't Kubeflow, but it will do. That whole process, like you said, Phil, it is really, really involved right now. There's lots of different ways you can do it. Maybe through step functions and glue and lambdas and so on. This is a lot of code, a lot of stuff to maintain, a lot of stuff that can break. So to get it all kind of into one single place is just fantastic. And then the other one for me was debugger. Just to be able to see how your models are working and get an idea of what's going on could shorten the cycle of tuning your models considerably.
Yeah, and so the other key thing was around that area and training. That seemed to have had a bit of focus. Make sure that you are feeding the model's data efficiently, that you're using the CPU and the GPU in tandem with each other. So it's interesting to see how some of those profiling features will help to improve that, because that is pretty much a trial and error process, more or less, at the moment. So it'd be good to see that. The other thing is about distributed training, so that should be good. And Trainium, and I was trying to not say that how Rick would say that from the bite-sized breakfast, but how that all links in and how you can then start training stuff and models across a vast range of instances and GPUs. I think that's interesting. It's going to take some while to play with as well. So that's kind of cool. And then obviously we had AWS cheese, as we like to know it, for anybody who didn't pick it up in some of our commentary. And the new Monotron boxes look a bit like a slice of Dutch Gouda. It should be interesting. The fact that it can take heat, revolutions per minute, etc., from non-connected devices and then stream that data into cloud. I think that's very important in terms of opening up another vast way of use cases and more for the industrial industry that will have machinery that's not edge and not enabled for that kind of thing. So I think that's kind of cool. And the other one was that I took away was around health. Obviously, big subject this year due to the pandemic. They also focused a bit on that, and also the diabetes thing with the Health Lake offering. What do we think about
that? So I haven't looked any more into Health Lake itself, but I did think it was interesting, like, as well as the sort of industrial aspect of it. We're very focused on specific industry specific services is really what I was getting. There was a lot of anomaly detection for manufacturing, and then the Health Lake. I think the use case and just the amount of data and making sense of the data, it seems really powerful, but it's not an industry that I'm personally involved in.
Okay, so we are back live. Just to make it clear to everybody, that was a video we were just playing there, Phil and Gillian and Mike having recorded that earlier in the week. I wanted to come back to our live pundits, not that the others are dead, but to just get your thoughts and further reflections on, I feel bad about that now. Once it's said, it's gone, isn't it? So Phil, pick up on that and rescue me from this.
Move swiftly on, Phil, quick.
no, I just wanted to thank Julie again. It was just really good to have that time with him. Really, really good, really insightful. The ML keynote, to be honest, it's best viewed in two parts, I think, because they were so interlinked with last week's Andy Jesse's keynote, and we went back at kind of interchanged quite a lot. I suppose, as we spoke about earlier, the repower tech and now the bias thing and all of that, and was a kind of the most prevalent topic because, as you've seen in some of these videos, we talked about things like algorithms going wild, according to the UK government, when obviously their data scientists didn't work out the private public school bias in their data sets. And some stuff like that is really important. And then obviously we talked about AWS cheese, as we refer to it now, the lookout, the censoring devices that are in AWS, the little things that are in AWS orange, yellow color. So it's just interesting, and it's bringing ML just to a more wider audience. People that the big things about your data are some of that is about when you don't have data, you just have big machinery and stuff to deal with, and you still want to be able to predict maintenance and see faults and that kind of thing. Overall, really cool. Does anybody else have any thoughts, questions?
Who watched it? Who saw it, by the way?
Uh-oh.
Yeah, half of you. Yeah. So go on. What was the uh-oh for? The fact that I'm now
only three of us, 4 of us. Yeah, I really enjoyed it actually. Both those things you said were the things that stuck out. Maybe that was the entire content, and that's why. Yeah, the bias thing, AWS Clarify is really interesting. I think it's really important to have a tool like that, because the more we automate stuff with machine learning, the more, if it is biased, you're screwed, aren't you? But I think it could be also quite dangerous in a way, like if it's not 100% like good, we're now relying on a tool and we think that it's all bias clear and it's even when it might not be. So we have to be very careful, I think, how much do we trust it?
I don't know, I think
really serious consequences if it doesn't work very well.
I don't know how much of that bias tool you can actually make put in the public domain. So that
really?
You can actually see that skew, and then you can say, well, actually, yeah, I can see where the data is coming from, but I can also see it drifting slightly out. So I'll take it with a pinch of salt, whatever.
Yeah, so Julian goes into that as well. He kind of used bank accounts as a good example, and loan prediction, and we're talking about like age group and saying that under 25 would get a different credit rating to over 25, and is that bias? Is that ageist against the one particular group, or is it simply the fact that under 25s are probably going out spending their money partying and doing all that, whilst over 25s are probably actually saving and trying to do long-term things with their money, and that's an important feature of the data. So it's interesting, and yeah, the important thing I think the other ML pundits put and Julian put is that you still have to have the human in the loop to make sure that what it makes sense or it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, definitely. It seems like I had a quick look on their website, a lot of the use cases so far have mostly been utilizing the clarification bit of it, like seeing where your machine learning outcomes come from, rather than actually using the bias detection. But I would like to give it a go. I wonder if I can just stick some data in there and see what happens, see if it works.
COVID, there's plenty of that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, for me, a lot of the stuff that was announced, it seemed to be, and I might have got this wrong, but it seemed to be sort of almost democratizing ML. So just making it easier to consume. It might upset some people, but in terms of enabling business, because at the end of the day, I think, in terms of money spent on ML, AI versus all the other AWS services, I'd imagine it's a relatively small amount compared to EC2, EBS and everything else. But what it does do, because it brings out that huge amount of data with it, and of course data has gravity, it then starts not to force you, but if you put a huge pool of data in there, you're running some AI ML against it, and then you think, oh, I might do something else with it, and that might kick off the other services. So I can sort of see why the focus is there. And I quite like the fact that it's being simplified, because you can always step it up and make it a much more complex offering. But initially, to get some results to say, does this work? Because then you can find out, yes, okay, yeah, I will invest some more time. Because the amount of times I've spoken to businesses and they're throwing data away. Literally, there's data streaming into their services and they're going, don't want, delete. It's like, whoa, don't do that. You can change the data. You can look at it in so many different ways and get a different view and a different perspective on it, rather than just trying to chuck it in spreadsheets all day long. So for me, that's the bit I really liked about it anyway.
I do agree. And I don't want to turn this into a sales thing, but it is about that. Everybody obsessed with very convoluted models, very high accuracy, everything like that. And actually, lower accuracy sometimes is better. And trying to get that first bit of ML out in your company kind of breaks the ground and allows you to see the potential, and then you can start complexing it after that and obsessing about the detail.
Yeah, absolutely agree.
Definitely. I love the sensors. AWS Lookout, whatever they're called. They're really cool.
Oh, the Monitron.
The cheese.
Oh yeah, the little
Monitron,
widgets of trees, Monitron. Yeah. I was actually working with a company in Oman, a petrochemical company, and they also provided the water desalination, purification, and everything else. And because where they are, i.e., in the middle of the desert, if a water pump breaks, it could be several days before they actually find out about it. And there is an engineering tool that you literally put it on top of the generator or the pump. It listens to how it's vibrating, and based on the vibrations will tell you how healthy that pump is in terms of its bearings and that side of it. So we were helping them build some visualizations around that, getting that data done on LoRaWAN so that we could get it into the cloud and then run some modeling on it to see what it is. Now that just simplifies that whole process where you can literally just glue something on it and hey press, or glue Monitron on it, and as long as you get some connectivity, you can start to find out, how often this is going to fail, if it's about to fail, and therefore prevent people from having a lack of water simply because a pump is about to fail that you knew about for the last X amount of days, weeks, whatever. So I like it a lot. I hate the name though.
I might stick one in my car, see how it gets on. Just stick one in the boot, see how it goes.
They'll be in every car soon, monitoring your driving.
I guess as long as you drove exactly the same road quality every day, that might give you.
I'm just going to put one in a remote control car, completely autonomous, to just go around the block day after day after day. That should skew my profile in the good driver section anyway.
You might get some discounts on your insurance.
Yeah.
Right. I'm going to bring us to a close on the ML chat now. Thanks again, Phil, and thanks everybody for contributing to that. Going to change topic, and we're going to give one of our sponsors a bit of a pitch now. So I'm delighted that we have two of our pundits from InfinityWorks. So, and that is Georgia and Adrian. And this, Adrian, is your 1 to 2.5 minute opportunity to tell us all about InfinityWorks, how cool you are, how amazing you are. And I do have genuinely an awful lot of respect for InfinityWorks. I think you're a great business. So
we love you too, Phil.
This is your time. And Georgia, if he misses anything out, then perhaps we could come to you as well. How would that be?
Yeah, I'll be sure to fill him in if he misses out the best bits.
Exactly. Totally unprimed for you, that, wasn't it? So, but that's what I'm good at, just landing stuff on people. Adrian, over to you. What do you do?
So InfinityWorks, generally, the general idea of it is about digital transformation to help companies to kick on whatever new things that it is that they're trying to do, whether it's launching new products, getting better value for money out of what they're doing, trying out new ideas. And, I guess we were founded from, scaling agile out. 6 years ago, that was kind of the thing that a lot of the people who started the company were focused on, taking that experience of taking organizations from individual teams that are working in agile and scaling that across the company. And how do you deal with the planning? How do you deal with the strategy of that? And then that kind of that's kind of scaling agile kind of led us to DevOps, because it's as you start to do agile, you get into this you're starting to deliver software more and more, and then you're coming up against, we need infrastructure to be in the right place at the right time, and that kind of led us to cloud adoption. And then how do we automate that? How do we take away the barriers that prevent us from delivering solutions and delivering value to customers? And then I just carried on like that, really, as we sought to kind of carry on that mission of how do we get stuff out to customers and how do we help organizations to scale to do that. So things like then introducing service design as a core concept to the things that we do. Looking at how a service works, analyzing it and looking at it from a user's point of view, carrying out research, something we added to the organization a year or two ago. There's a new capability. And then that's really pushed forward our data as well, as we try and close the loop on that, because we need more data to do better decisions on how we build products for customers. So it's been about helping organizations to sort of tie all these disparate elements together and then scale their companies to help them do that. So kind of mixture of different things, helping companies to upskill their teams, to deliver, or do staff augmentation and deliver a solution alongside with somebody, and even things like managed services. So in some cases we build it and run it for customers. And I think that kind of building it and running it really changes the way that you build systems, making sure that you kind of got all the metrics and all the other elements in place. It's not just kind of chucking it over the wall for somebody else to look after.
Yeah, definitely. And so for the likes of who, name drop some customers.
Name drop some customers. So we're really lucky. We've got some just amazing companies considering the age. We was founded 6 years ago. I've been with the company just over 5 years. Right from the early stages. We started out 11 people, I think, when I joined 5 years ago. Now over 400 consultants. This year we got a sales team for the first time. So believe it or not, I'm in the sales team. I help, so I sort of do work getting early stage things, and it's really, we've got. I'm not sure who we're allowed to name drop, so I'm just going to drop some names of people we've got like on the website, so I'm in safe hands. So like financial services startups like Asto, who are offshoot from Santander Group, Starling Bank, we've helped them to deliver solutions as well, right the way through to more established organizations, in the financial services, banks and so on. A lot of work in the retail sector as well for lots of retailers you'll have used. Basically, in the UK, if you do anything, you're probably going to have touched one of our services. If you go to a GP, you're going to have used, the GP will have used the system that we helped work on. Everything from your patient records through to when you go to the pharmacy. We do a lot of work in healthcare. If you're into sports, we're doing stuff in that work in that world. If you have a bank account, there's a good chance we've touched on it somewhere. So we're kind of one of those companies that kind of in the background, doing a lot of really interesting work for great organizations. But yeah, we're good stuff. It's great fun.
Excellent. Really good fun. Georgia, anything to add? You're slightly newer to the business, I think.
Yeah, I'm pretty new. Joined last April, not this year before.
Yeah.
I mean, Adrian said most of it, I think.
Covered it well, hasn't he? He's covered.
Yeah, so I think, it's what I've certainly noticed is, we're not just good at the tech side. I feel like we're a genuinely nice bunch of people.
Cool.
Hopefully you'll get that from me and Adrian as well. And I think that makes it nice to work with.
Yeah, it really does matter, isn't it? When you're choosing a company to work with and getting some engineers to work alongside, you're going to be working pretty closely with those people. It does help if they're actually nice and easy to get along with.
It sure does. It really does. Okay. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Infinity Works, and thank you to all of our other sponsors. Of course, we've got Phil Basford from Inner Wisdom. We've got Jason from Do It International. I don't think we've got any other sponsors. There's me from Steamhouse, and Steve Zhigeri from Stack Rocks. Have I forgotten anybody there? Inner Wisdom, Infinity Works, Do It, Stack Rocks, and Steamhouse. Those are our 5 sponsors. Again, thank you very much, sponsors. This is all doable because of you. So, very quickly, on my running order, I have security, governance, etc. Has anybody seen? Yes, look at this. Matt, do you want to talk to us about security and governance? And I think Zamira, have you got some words to contribute around this area? Things that you've seen at reInvent this week on that? Matt or Zamira?
It's Zamira's specialist area, isn't it? Like you're all about the control tower, all about the compliance.
Go for it, Zamira. Give us your picks. I've got a few picks for like some announcements and news just around kind of security in general. But yeah, if you have compliancy thoughts, that'd be awesome.
Thank you so much. So unfortunately, guys, for security and governance, I didn't saw any session this week. So I was focusing completely on machine learning. And I saw probably all the session about machine learning. So yeah, I'm hand over to you, Matt. Probably you can cover all of this part for me as well.
No worries. You're going to have to get me up to speed on the machine learning stuff because I'm exactly the opposite. I saw none of the ML stuff. I was actually going to ask if on the ML keynote, if there was any new announcements for like, running those, automating those models kind of outside of AWS, kind of what is the new UX from AWS about kind of, greengrass updates or anything of getting that kind of machine learning out to kind of usable locations. But I guess I'll leave that for a later point in the show. On the security things, my notes for this week, and I wasn't on last week's roundup, so I also have some kind of interesting thoughts from last week as well. It's interesting, if you search IAM on the reInvent, whole kind of reInvent global announcement page, you get 3 results. So it's one of those where like a lot of my kind of security takeaways have just been on other products and like, okay, well, thinking of kind of our customers at Bridge Crew, for example, or our open source users where we're trying to help them kind of statically analyze their CloudFormation and their Terraform to stop security issues getting to become real objects. Like, how do these things affect me? How do they maybe affect ease of IAM management? How do they affect auditability? But they're not specifically security. Well, some of them are, but a lot of it's kind of not security products in its own right. It's just features that might actually help the way we see DevOps teams we're working with improve and automate. And so the first one, the big announcement is AWS Proton. Again, like not specifically a security tool, but the fact that unlike the previous AWS kind of self-service abilities, Proton allows you to encapsulate the entire stack. So not only, just your application, but also things like your CI/CD pipelines that would be needed to deploy that application or update that stack and things like that. And so we already have, for example, an AWS workshop on the AWS Workshop IO about using kind of code build and code deploy to kind of put a load of security tests for your CloudFormation, static analysis, making sure you're kind of, the CloudFormation you've written is validated against kind of the AWS best practices. There's already really good kind of how-tos and descriptions of how to do that in a CI/CD tool. So, and a lot of these announcements are very for teams that have a DevOps team that is giving services to other teams. They're not kind of for small roll your own startups realistically, but in the example of Proton, the ability to basically say, use this stack, and this stack already has a predefined CI/CD pipeline, which is already doing a load of these security tests against your CloudFormation, already looking for these kind of misconfigurations. That's great. That means that individual dev teams aren't having to think about wiring that into their own CI/CD. It's just coming from this kind of known good template, along with all the kind of tying back into the kind of other security tools. So the fact that you can kind of automate more of the life cycle of a given product or a given solution, I think, for larger enterprises or for larger companies that have that central team trying to validate these designs or validate these kind of products for other DevOps teams to use is kind of cool. There was news this week around Audit Manager and how Audit Manager kind of allows you to centralize a load of security related data from other AWS products for analysis and kind of audit reasons. So Audit Manager basically allows you to go and collect kind of resource configuration across kind of your current state of AWS resources. So like the S3 encryption bucket policy, or, the settings on your RDS instance backups, as well as CloudTrail logs on what users are accessing what, as well as compliance checks from existing things you might have in Security Hub. So it's kind of a single place to kind of take a snapshot of kind of all security related, snapshot of configuration, snapshot of this was your API users access during this audit time period, and kind of centralizes that all in one place. And another theme which I kind of covered on the initial kickoff show, the pre-invent show, is all of these kind of new security related tools are always tying back into organizations and Security Hub. And there's just this general trend of trying to make these a single pane of glass across all of your AWS accounts. So you can kind of define this once and kind of see it in, see it across again. Like I was talking about with Proton for kind of self-serve across bigger teams, this is really aimed at kind of teams running multiple other sub-teams' AWS accounts. And, that's probably where it's going to come in more useful for like that DevOps of DevOps, almost as an internal product. But yeah, quite interesting in terms of just, one less thing to manage and allowing you to kind of collect all those different resources from all those different products.
I think, oh, sorry, Matt. So I think Amazon Proton I watched already. I think it was really, really a big announcement for organization and for DevOps and for environment side. So, I mean, it seems like we are talking about DevOps for a long time now, but this was really nice service when mixed together developer and operation in the same place. So basically, you create this kind of pipeline and this kind of stacks, and developer from other sides don't need to ask DevOps people, well, give me your environment ready, but environment is already there, right. And you just build your application, whatever application is in top of this environment. That should be probably environment in different account, because what I understand is support as well cross account, not just one account.
Yeah,
and this
100%.
is really, really nice feature. So I mean, I really enjoyed this.
I see it from a completely different point of view to you folks. That's for sure. I was horrified when I saw it as a service. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I was excited by the idea of, oh, great, new build tooling, new release tooling. And then when I looked at the templates, it was like there was CloudFormation, there was a build spec YAML inside the CloudFormation, and then there was, I think, Ginger 2 templating to pull the thing together. So I was like, I was hoping for a replacement for sort of code pipeline and, a sort of brave new world of wonderful build tooling. And then what I got was more of the same. Also, there was like a serverless example, which didn't use SAM or serverless framework, and it just used like straight up Lambda functions with some CRUD backend. And I was like, who writes,
yeah,
the teams hadn't talked to each other. It's like, if you're going to do a serverless, why would it not use AWS's serverless capabilities like that? Isn't that as a developer, if you're being pushed to use SAM or you push to being Amplify, why don't the examples use SAM or Amplify? Why do they use something sort of manual?
Yeah, I get that. For me, like I saw it more aimed at a very specific, like you're right. It's not a improvement past code pipeline or code deploy. It's literally a wrapper to add code pipeline and code deploy as a configured pipeline into your other infrastructure, so that you can hand that stack with some, like you said, templated variables with Ginger to someone else and to someone else. Like I see it as.
Don't you just need some shell scripts for that? You don't need a service.
I see it as like a marketplace plus, and I hate the word marketplace. And I think the use case is if you are a big enough shop where you have a team responsible for offering internal services to other development teams and other DevOps teams. Like if you're big enough to already need a marketplace, this gives you a better functionality for an end-to-end deployment than traditionally a marketplace would give you, because AWS marketplace kind of not the, what's it called, the one where you can kind of define what your sub-organizations can and can't use. That was very much kind of at the individual AWS product level, rather than here is a predefined stack with templates and with variables that you can add. So yeah, I agree. I think for individual DevOps teams that are kind of having to do their own tooling, I don't really think it's aimed at those people. But for larger shops where there's a team that defines what you can and can't consume, I think that's where it's aimed.
So we had a chat with the product team for Proton, and they were quite clear that it's designed for companies that are they've got their own release teams, and they often have basically their own homebrewed scripts, or tooling that is sort of just coupled together that let you do all the different things and provide some kind of a standard or consistent release management and governance. And this is basically Amazon doing it for you so that you can, I guess, have an easy job of, I don't know, providing that kind of tooling for your teams. It's definitely not for everyone.
Yeah, I understand also that supports not only CloudFormation, but also Terraform when you create this kind of stacks in Amazon Proton, but I'm not 100% sure. So at least during the meeting that we had with these guys from Proton, they said that also support Terraform to build all of these stacks and to create the models.
Which makes sense, because I should imagine there's still more Terraform use than handwritten CloudFormation use at this point.
Yeah, definitely. So I mean, CloudFormation, it's I would say not really mature as service, so or as based on JSON, so big stacks. And when it comes to child, and it's going to be really, really complex. But at least Terraform, you can create like a models, and it's much easier.
Which actually ties me in quite nicely to one of last week's announcements, which again, like, I'm going to take a security angle, which is the announcement of CloudFormation modules, just like we have Terraform modules. And to your point, CloudFormation is horribly massive and wild, and having the ability to kind of package up and test, this is a specific module of CloudFormation. It comes with its own required least privilege IAM to do this particular thing. We can, test the CloudFormation within that against, AWS best practices, against the CIS AWS guidelines. And then, people can consume that as a kind of known trusted entity, just like we care about making sure we have secure dependencies in our NPM library or our Python pip library or the Go binaries, modules we're bringing in. I think that's a step in the right direction for making CloudFormation a lot more manageable, and also kind of making security of CloudFormation as we see more and more kind of, copying and pasting from Stack Overflow effectively for that kind of stuff. And again, like Proton, I think allows us to be mindful of kind of building security into reusable pipelines in a way that those big kind of cobbled together scripts may or may not have done for those kind of existing large teams of teams.
Yeah, apart of this, Amazon Proton, I really didn't see anything about the governance or landing zone, control tower. I'm still waiting to see something, but let's maybe next week, or probably nothing.
There's a talk on this week. It says how to onboard existing AWS accounts onto Control Tower, and I thought that might be interesting, because anybody who's sort of invested in Landing Zone is probably thinking, oh, how am I going to get off this, and how am I going to move over to Control Tower and that sort of thing. So I think that'll be interesting.
Good. That's coming up next week, is it, Adrian? Yeah. Great. Good stuff. Okay. Thank you. Good section, that. We are, Dave, if you can follow me round, I think we're now going to go to the third episode in our feature AWS Community Mastermind. If you've not seen this before, this is where Ricardo Suarez, developer advocate from AWS, puts our contestants from the community, he puts questions to them all about things to do with AWS and general tech. This is our very own pundit, Mike Fowler from Clarinet, in the big black chair today. We've had John Holman, who came first, Edmund Krask last week. This week, it's Mike Fowler. Let's see if, and I think it's Edmund who is in top spot at the moment with 12 points, I'm trying to remember. Let's see if Mike manages to beat Edmund's score. Roll VT, please, Dave.
Hello and welcome to the reInvent Mastermind special, where I ask 10 general technology questions and 10 reInvent specific questions for the chance to be crowned the CONSOM reInvent Mastermind champion. I'm delighted to welcome Mike. Mike, hello. Do you want to introduce yourself? Tell us everyone where you work and what you do.
Hi, yeah, I'm Mike Fowler. I'm Principal Data Engineer at Clarinet, and I help our customers make better use of their data in the cloud.
Oh, awesome, awesome. And are there any things you're feeling particularly nervous about this competition?
Well, I haven't looked at the sessions too closely yet, and while I've been to reInvent before, that might not hold much sway here, given that this is all virtual now.
Right, we shall see. And is there anything in particular that you're looking forward to at reInvent this year?
I'm looking forward to some of the data announcements. There's been some interesting stuff announced already. So if that's what they say is the throwaways, I'm hoping for some real big announcements.
Oh, cool. Well, we shall see. And finally, are there any shout outs you want to give?
Oh, shout out to my fellow colleagues at Clarinet who are also excited about AWS to see what new stuff we get to play with next year.
Awesome, awesome, brilliant. Well, okay, with that, let's begin. So in normal mastermind rules, I'm going to go through the questions. First of all, the general ones, and then the second one, the reInvent specials. You can pass at any time. I'll come back once. In the event of a tie, it's the person with the fewest passes that will win. So let's crack on. So question one, what company is behind the Pentium and Xeon processors?
Intel.
Correct. Question two, who is the CEO of Apple?
It's Tim Cook.
Correct. Question three, which video game character from the 80s was the first to have a massive sideline in merchandise and had TV and film appearances?
Is it Mario?
It's not. Good guess, though. It was Pac-Man.
Oh,
question four, in which city does Red Hat have its global HQ?
Pass on that.
Okay, come back. Question five, what was the name of the OS that shipped with the Acorn Archimedes?
No idea. I'll have to pass.
Okay, pass. Question six, what's the name of the 3D virtual world from Linden Labs that became briefly popular in the mid-2000s?
Nope, pass.
Okay, no worries. Question seven, who is widely credited as inventing the World Wide Web?
Tim Berners-Lee.
Correct.
Tim Berners-Lee.
Oh, excellent. Question eight, what was the catchphrase that the robot used in Lost in Space when he wanted to warn his owner?
Oh. I can just about hear it, but I can't think the words.
Yeah.
It was the same word twice, but maybe it'll come to me in a minute. Pass for the moment.
Okay, pass. Let's pass on that one. We'll come back. Question nine. Which company is credited with first coining the phrase cloud in the context of computing?
Is it IBM?
It's not. It's actually General Magic. So I had a lot of fun in Googling that, actually, and Wikipedia's got a fascinating page on that for people who might be interested. And the final question of this round is, what does networking protocol SMB stand for?
So it's symmetric something block, I think. Symmetric multi-block. I don't think that's quite right.
Okay, no, it's server message block. Okay, so you passed on 4 questions. So let's go back to the ones we've passed on. First one was question 4. In what city does Red Hat have its global HQ?
Could it be Raleigh?
Oh dear, I've made a big mistake there. Apologies everyone on that one. Question 5. What's the name of the OS that shipped with the Acorn Archimedes?
I'm just going to say Acorn OS.
No, it's either RISC OS or Arthur. Question 6. What's the name of the 3D virtual world from Linden Labs that became briefly popular in the mid-2000s?
No idea.
It was Second Life. And then question 8 was, what's the catchphrase used by the robot in Lost in Space when he was warning his owner?
I'm just gonna go with Master.
It was actually Danger Will Robinson.
Oh,
Danger Will Robinson.
Yes, that's yep.
Yeah. Once you hear it, you know it. So at
Yep.
the end of the first round, you scored 1, 2, 3, 4. Make sure that's right. 1, 2. You scored 4 out of 10, so very respectable. Okay, let's go into the reinvent round now. So question 1: after which American national holiday does reinvent typically take place?
Thanksgiving.
Yep, correct. Question 2: pre-invent or reinvent? So here you've got to answer the question whether this was launched and announced either at pre-invent or reinvent. So pre-invent or reinvent at AWS Outposts?
I think it was reinvent.
Correct. Question 3: at reInvent 2018, a new service was introduced that allowed you to rev your engines as you studied reinforcement learning. What was that service called?
Deep Racer.
It was indeed. Question 4: the Tatanka Challenge typically takes place during which reInvent social event?
Oh, the social event itself. Darn. That's all about the chicken wings.
That's right. But what was that event called?
Oh. Pass. Maybe it'll come back to me.
Yep. Question 5: what t-shirt did Werner Vogels wear during the 2019 keynote?
It almost certainly had a band on it.
Indeed. You're in the right lines.
But I can't remember which band because I'm not into his music.
Take a guess then.
Oh. No, I'm going to pass. I'm trying to come up with something.
Okay, all right. Question 6: what is the name of the after party at reInvent in 2019?
Replay?
Oh, no, it was Intersect. Replay was the year before, but last year it was Intersect. Question 7: what does the last keynote on Thursday? Sorry, who does the last keynote on the Thursday?
Werner Vogels.
Correct. Question 8: in 2019, which financial institution came up on stage with Andy Jassy?
Oh, I think it was one of the big credit card ones. I'm going to just go with Visa.
No, it was Goldman Sachs.
Oh, right.
And question 9: during which reInvent was AWS Fargate launched?
2017.
It was indeed.
I was there.
And the final, oh, yeah, fantastic. The final question, at the first reInvent, to the nearest 1,000, how many people turned up in Las Vegas?
We'll go 2,000.
It was 6,000. Okay, so you passed on 2 questions. Let's go back to those. The first one is, the Tatanka Challenge typically takes place during which reInvent social event?
No, I can't think of what it's called.
Okay, it's Midnight Madness.
Oh, yes. Yep.
Yeah, it's one of those ones you kick yourself once you hear it. And the last one you passed on was, which t-shirt did Werner Vogels wear during the 2019 keynote?
Well, I can't remember, but I'm going to say it should have been Prodigy.
It should have been, but it wasn't. It was a Dutch hip hop band, I believe, called Oostdorp Posse.
Oh, yeah,
so,
I wouldn't have remembered that at all.
Yeah, you're not into your Dutch hip hop then.
Sadly not.
Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So in that round, you scored 5, giving you a total of 9 points. So congratulations, Mike. You've done very well. And we shall see how you compare with your competitors next week during the Consums reInvent coverage. Thanks again for taking part and being such a good sport.
Thank you for having me.
Mike Fowler, Oh, not quite nipped it there, have you? So our leader for this round of Mastermind is still Edmund Krask with his 12 out of 20. We have one more contestant who is coming up in our final show. And you'll have to tune in next week to find out who that is, because I haven't got the details in front of me. Yeah, tune in and see if Edmund is the overall reInvent special edition of AWS Community Mastermind. And also tune in to see whether or not he or she can beat Phil Basford's score from earlier in the year of 13.5, Phil?
12.5.
13.5 or
12.5.
12.5. Ooh, right, okay. And of course, our reigning champion of all time is Jan Sway, I think, isn't it, Jan?
I don't remember my score, honestly.
No, none of us remember, but we'll just go with the fact that you've got more than anyone else. How's that?
Sure.
But maybe, Phil's
you.
was the most highly contested. Right, okay, we've got two more sections that we need to do today. I really want to spin around and ask you all about the infrastructure keynote, and then we're going to have a very quick chat about what is going to come up in next week's reInvent. So let's all have a chat about the infrastructure keynote. Who wants to go first?
I didn't watch it. So.
Okay. Sorry. I can go first.
Yeah, you go first, Samira.
Do that. You go first. Please do, because I don't want to say anything.
Say some nice stuff first, Samira.
I watched the infrastructure keynote, and honestly, one of the things that really I enjoyed was White Buffalo. The music in the beginning of this keynote was super cool, and I really enjoyed. So, the infrastructure keynote, I was expecting some new stuff or new services, but honestly nothing was launched during this keynote. He talked more about how the infrastructure and how all of this region across the globe, how the ability zones, but nothing that was new or new service or new feature, at least from this keynote. I didn't remember anything.
Aren't you interested in concrete production?
Yeah. As long as there was data behind it, but that, I think that was part of the problem as well. There was a lot on the sustainability end towards the end. There was a lot of goodwill, and there was a lot of good messaging around this is what we're doing with energy, this is what we're doing with renewables, blah, 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 blah. And we're doing this concrete and we're doing this water thing, but there was no data to back it up. From a data obsessed company, there's nothing that you and I can actually get apart from the marketing that says, we take our water, we recycle it 3 times, and then we push it out through these canals, and then it can be used for irrigation. But is there a cost for that? I don't know. There was no.
That's right. Having lived next to an industrial ditch in the town I grew up in, it was called Stinky Brook, and it was called that for a reason. I as I saw the people alongside it, I was like, is that a nice place to be? Is that like a place you go for a bike ride?
Yeah, I thought it was the band were brilliant. I was surprised their Guiding Light song got through the PR side of it with the swear words in it, but it didn't offend me. I really liked it. It was really good. I was just surprised that somebody would do that at a keynote speech, but hey, great. It
flashed through my head to say, what did they say, Jason? And I thought, no, you'll actually take me on my word there and actually say it. So let's not go that way. White
Buffalo, Guiding Light, Google it, lyrics there, second verse, third line, I think, second line. But yeah, so that the music was good, and then it sort of opened up with an Intel piece, and then straight into Amazon's own processor.
I think he spent a long time totally slagging off the fault tolerance of other clouds, right?
Yeah, he did that, then led batteries, and then that's when I tuned off.
Yeah, there was sort of, these were leading up, because I was trying to understand. I mean, I've been in this bubble for a long time, i.e. cloud, and then infrastructure before that. So I think anybody that goes, well, the vast majority of people that go to an infrastructure keynote will have some idea of what a processor is, and what a network is, and what a battery is, and what a generator is, and what fault tolerance are, and those sort of elements. So I thought the message was a bit weird, because Yeah, sure. There's an awful lot of people. If you consider the market, Amazon saying, oh, everybody's saying that, the cloud has only really captured about 4% of the market of the compute that's out there. So there's still another 96% to go for people to go, for Amazon and all the other cloud providers to go and grab. So that's cool in one respect in terms of, laying that out and getting those people that aren't in this bubble to try and understand it. It's been going, 12, 13, 14 years now. Maybe they should have caught up, but hey, each to their own. I've been doing this a long time. So that's one side of it. Get that. But then it sort of really stepped into, okay, we're going to step into processes and how processes work. And it was just like, really, if they don't understand what a battery is and a generator is, they're not going to get what symmetrical processing is and why it's bad in some cases and good in others, and why HPC use cases and so on and so forth. So I thought it was really odd. The thing that was really odd for me is like, okay, build up, talking about these things. There was a couple of, like you said, there was a couple of stabs at other providers, and the build-ups to those stabs were quite long and drawn out in terms of what is an availability zone, what is a region, and so on, and how other vendors define those. So it's just like a long-winded poke. Fine, poke, because they've been poking back for a long time. And then you go through all of that, and then there was nothing. It was just like the end. It was like, hang on, I think something's gone wrong. I think it terminated early. There's a slew of announcements surely that's going to go with this to help us with, organizations, help us with Control Tower, help us with all these other bits and pieces, either making it simpler, making it better, listening to our feedback, giving us something back of all the people that do that sort of core infrastructure, that back end services that, we can actually dive into and understand what's happening in that landscape. And it just didn't happen. It was a lot of marketing.
You know what? I enjoyed the stuff about the switch. I enjoyed the stuff about the massive power switch that they had, and the challenge of switching over and having a massive uninterruptible power supply. Yeah. And I did enjoy the idea of, hey, instead of having a massive lead acid battery in a room with air conditioning and all the rest of it, we're going to put loads of these smaller batteries in the racks. And I kind of liked that. It was a kind of interesting note, as it made me think, well, and the stuff around the availability zones and the woolly language in other organizations. Yeah. If you're trying to if you're thinking about what are you buying, are you buying is it an apples to apples comparison? They're trying to differentiate. I think that, look, we've invested in all this stuff like the Nitro chipset, like these are the things that you're getting from us that differentiate us from just your data center down the road.
Yeah, I mean, all of that message is true and it's right, but I mean, it won't take you less than a second to Google what is an availability zone in Azure versus an AZ in AWS and so on. And so, I mean, with the smallest amount of reading, you're talking about less than a paragraph, you can understand what the deltas are between those two. It doesn't really need a keynote speech for it. It was less than 101 for me. So, but I live in this bubble, so it'd be interesting to hear what other people.
So based on like previous reInvents, there's two things we have to remember. This is normally the Monday Night Live, Tuesday Night Live slot. They do it every year. It is really focused on the techies amongst us who want to know that detail. It's not really even overtly announcement based or marketing based. And the main thing you have to remember, on a normal reInvent, you've probably had 2 or 3 beers before you sit through that. So that really does help for it to sink in.
Nope. Maybe some gin and tonics, but yeah.
Whatever your poison is, but that's normally what you've had by the time you sit down at 9 p.m. Vegas time and watch Monday Night Live.
I think for me the biggest is I'm happy to listen to that marketing. I think it's a message that Amazon's been bashing around for years. But there was an awful lot of good messaging that came out around infrastructure. If you look at things like multicast and you look at the transit gateways, loads of little blog posts that really deep. There was some fantastic stuff around infrastructure, and none of it made it. It just went straight to blog post. So I just thought it was a bit odd, because I felt like there was a massive build up, and it was like, oh, my dad's come in and he's turned the stereo off now, so can you all go home? And it's just like, come on.
I think the gap for me was the security element of it, around, so particularly when you saw the Mac Mini, and I won't go into that, but you wonder, with things like Schrems 2, with the Cloud Act in the United States, essentially you've got the US oversight, US company being able to access data. And it makes you think, well, hang on a minute, what is the security of this thing actually like? Because the Cloud Act, for instance, doesn't make it a requirement that the cloud provider can puts backdoors into services that they operate. So what have Amazon done to prevent them from being able to comply with the US law? Not comply with the US law, sorry, that's not the right term, but to what have they done to mean that they can't access, that they can't be compelled to hand over data?
2 more minutes on this. Anyone else got anything, observations or?
Well, we have to talk about the Mac, don't we? We have to talk about the Mac. It was the biggest surprise for me is, oh great, wow, Mac instances. You couldn't imagine what a Mac instance might look like in a hyperscale cloud provider. What I did not imagine it to look like was
They did show you on the YouTube video. They did show the boxes of the minis arriving.
Yeah,
so that's literally what happened.
It was just like it's like you pulled out a drawer in your underpants drawer or something, and there was a Mac inside it with a couple of extra circuit boards, and that was it. And you're like, oh, okay, that's the solution for racking up the Macs.
Do you think it actually is, or do you think that's just a PR spin on the fact that if Mac have allowed Amazon to virtualize them, then everyone else would complain that they weren't allowed to, so they had to make it look like it's just Mac minis racked in boxes?
No, that's real. I mean, if you look at their sort of device farm for testing and everything else, they're physical devices. So I would say unequivocally that would be real. And why wouldn't it be real? It's a less than elegant solution. It's scrappy, but it works. I haven't seen it working at scale and I haven't tested it, but they've pushed it out as a product, so it must work. They must have done the testing and all of that. I mean, there's going to be a sweet spot where you'd want to use something like that rather than going buying a couple of Macs and testing your applications that way. I quite liked it. I'm quite enamored by that scrappiness approach. Is like, really, how can we do this? Let's just slap a Mac in a drawer with a power supply, plug a Thunderbolt in it, and then we can hook it into our own API and do other things like providing some EBS storage or S3 connectivity or an API. I quite like that. It was
that poor TFTP netboot server.
So, regarding the OS, is everybody on the same OS version? Can you actually move between different Mac?
Yeah,
OS
you
versions?
can. There's nothing for Big Sur yet, but you can certainly pick up Catalina and one before that. I can't remember what his name is. But yeah, all you do is when you're picking, when you go and pick your instances, you pick a Mac Mini, and then or Mac Metal, and then you can go and pick the particular flavor of OS that you want to do on there as well. So. Yeah, relatively simple. Although, be careful. It's expensive. I think you'll end up paying about £900 a month for $900 a month for about a Mac. So,
I wanted to say the same. So super expensive. It would be very useful for iOS developer, but really expensive.
I mean, you need that price point in terms of, are you getting to the point where you're going to have to employ somebody to look after all these Macs, to look after resetting them, rebuilding the OSs, putting all of this stuff back on there, bootstrapping them all. And even with tooling, software tooling to be able to orchestrate that, it's still going to cost you some time and money. So I can't imagine people are just going to leave these things on. It's going to be part of a CI/CD pipeline.
I asked the mobile engineers on my team, like, hey, InfinityWorks, I was like, hey, are you excited about this? Is this going to be useful for you for CI/CD? I'm like, no, 5 years too late, mate. Like, I was like, oh, right, wow. It was like one line answer. Like,
one thing I don't think they covered either. Like, you look at kind of other bare metal cloud providers in the past, and without having like the Nitro chip, there've been attacks where people have flashed CPU microcode that then persists to the next, or NVMe flash microcode, or just something in the firmware of a bare metal device that then persists to the next tenant renting that device. That's specifically what Nitro, amongst other things, is designed to stop. Kind of interesting that there was kind of nothing I saw on how they're going to tackle that. We're just offering kind of actual, completely OEM Mac machines for multi-tenant environments.
Yeah, no, I haven't seen any sort of safeguards around that in terms of could you persist it in RAM or stick another piece of firmware on it or whatever it may be, because it could even be on one of the other microcontrollers rather than the main one, something like a USB controller, something simple Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to dive in there. Anybody who hasn't had the opportunity to give an opinion on the infrastructure keynote yet? Georgia, did you manage to see it? Anything else to add?
No, I didn't see that one, but it sounds interesting. I'm going to watch it back.
Definitely. Yeah. And actually, yeah, that's a very good point. It is going to be available as of, oh, Jason, you said this earlier. When do you think
so what they're doing is at the end of the week, they'll release the videos at the end of the day on a Friday, but it'll be the end of the day of a Friday of the team that are doing it in the US. So probably Seattle time, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
So early hours for us.
Cool.
All right. I could say something nice though, like for once, you know. So I will say that they've tripled or multiplied by 300% their use of renewable energy, and have brought in the plans to be 100% renewable energy. They brought that in by 5 years down to 2025, and I just think that's a wholly positive statement.
Right.
So
yeah,
it's fantastic, but there was no data. It was just like, yeah, we're going to do this. Okay,
let's leave us on that positive note. All in all, I think the summary of that was missed opportunity.
Yeah.
Fine. Right. Let's look forward to next week. We have a couple of minutes before we need to say goodbye. We have, well, someone tell me what you know and what you're looking forward to next week. Who wants to dive in?
Not me.
Oh, next week is Werner, so
That's right.
Yeah.
Werner's keynote. What are you
Werner's
thinking? What are you hoping for out of that, Zamira?
Well, I'm waiting that he also do some announcement. So he's more technical guy than Andy Jassy, but this year was completely different re-event, right? So we had the machine learning keynote, we had the infrastructure keynote. It seems like everything was covered in different areas. So yeah, I'm a little bit surprised that I'm going to wait from Werner this year, because he covered always the technical part. So some technical stuff.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to Werner's. I have no idea what he's going to say or what he's going to talk about, simply because everything has changed over the other keynotes. The only thing I'm hoping for is that he puts on the 12 days of reInvent at the end of it.
Well, so for those that don't know what that is, tell us, Jason.
I'm curious also what kind of t-shirt he's wearing this year.
Kind of t-shirt, what music he's going to have. You know, that was the highlight of the infrastructure keynote. So, okay, so there's Werner's keynote. I think there's some serverless architecture and edge leadership sessions. So feels like another packed week.
Go to YouTube, type in 12 days of reInvent, you'll find it.
Sorry, you were explaining that. This is you and Rick Harvey doing one of your breakfast sessions and the 12 days of reInvent.
He's a genius. I mean, we sat there, wrote it the night before, we top and tailed it in the morning, and he nailed it first time, and he's got a good voice. So even better, you don't want to hear me cackling away. So all I could do was laugh, because when we wrote these down, it's like, oh man, this is not going to work. And he pulled it off. So kudos.
It is brilliant. It is very, very good. And on that note then, so lots of stuff going on next week, including the breakfast show, 9 o'clock, Wednesday morning, Friday morning.
Yep.
It's Jason and Rick for about 50 minutes, I think.
Yep.
Doing a bit of a roundup and signposting to good stuff to go and watch that day. Cool. Are we done?
Yeah, I think so.
Magic. Thank you very much, everybody. And thank you to everybody who's tuned in. And we'll see you next week.
Brilliant. Thank you. Bye.
I should have been here.